Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's APMG webinar, Being Agile. My name's Mark Constable. I'll be your host and moderator, and it's a pleasure to be joined by regular guest presenter, Melanie Franklin. I suspect many of you with us today will be familiar with Melanie, having attended previous webinars, but for the benefit of those that aren't, a quick introduction for you. So Melanie's an experienced practitioner, author, trainer, and consultant in all things Agile, project, program, and change management. She conducts the bulk of that work for her own training consultancy business, Agile Change Management Limited. So today's session, Melanie's going to share some practical tips and ideas for adopting higher levels of Agile practices. And that's regardless of whether you're starting on your Agile journey and simply looking to discover more, or perhaps you're an experienced Agile practitioner and open to some new tips and techniques. Before I hand over to Melanie, bear with me a few more moments while I cover logistics for the session. So the first thing to note is we are recording the webinar, and everyone that's registered will receive a follow-up email from me tomorrow at some point, as soon as we've got the recording and slides online. Secondly, you're welcome to submit questions at any stage. So you should see a question function on your GoToWebinar control panel. So feel free to fire those in. I'll be keeping a close eye on them, and we'll try and address as many as we can towards the end. We welcome any feedback for the webinars because that's really helpful to help us plan and deliver webinars in the future. And just one other thing to note, which isn't on the screen, we will be launching a poll pretty much just after Melanie gets started, I think, so do look out for that. And I think that's it for logistics. So I think we're set. So without further ado, welcome Melanie, great to have you with us again, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Now, as Mark just said, he's going to conduct the poll. This is because I want to get to know you a little bit. I'm really interested in why you're on the webinar, because whatever you say in terms of the percentages, I will try and angle my comments around it. So Mark, can you put the poll up for me?
Yeah, sure. And just before I do that, there's GoToWebinar has a little bit of an annoying character limit on the poll responses. So I've summarized the 4 options that are on the screen in the actual poll that you will see in a second, but it should be obvious which one's which. So it's coming up now. Quite a mix so far, Mel. Right, so around 3/4 have voted, and we got, so the first option, build and maintain my professional credibility, 30%.
Yep.
Second option, I don't really know what it means, so curious, it's around 13 or 14%. 52%, I want to add techniques to my toolkit.
Oh, okay.
And 6% say none of the above.
Okay. Maybe they've joined the wrong webinar. Who knows? Right. Okay. Let's make this fun. I was on a webinar at lunchtime where there was a brilliant speaker, but the people who were introducing him took 14 minutes before they even got started, and they talked a lot about which shirts they were wearing and how warm it was. So I'm not a big fan of wasting time. So we'll get on. Everything that I want to talk about today on Agile is underpinned by these Agile concepts. For the 14% of you who you know, Agile's talked about a lot, but don't know what it means, I'm going to be looking at Agile in the wider sense. The perspective I'm taking is that Agile is, some people call it a mindset, some people call it a culture, some people call it behaviours. But ultimately, we are going to be behaving and thinking and prioritising in a particular way. Really, what Agile means is that we don't assume that we know it all up front, that actually the world is changing incredibly fast, and that maybe we should do little and often. Maybe we should do a little bit of work, see how that works out for people, see what the reaction is, see if it's working, see if people can tell us what they want to add to it, how they want to move it forward. Everything I've just talked about is what we describe as the evolving solution. So ultimately that underpins Agile. And it's that willingness to behave in that way that I'm going to pick up on today and give you some quick hacks for how you can become more of this. We need to be thinking, if we've got an evolving solution, that we're going to be implementing change into an organisation, project deliverables, and the new ways of working. They go together, and we're going to be putting into the organisation in sort of waves of change. Iterative, really, repeatable. Yeah, so we're going to do a little bit, put it into use, do a little bit more, put it into use. If you're coming from the Agile PM world, we call that deployment. If you're coming from the change management world, we might use the phrase implementation or adoption. We might talk about transitioning to new ways of work. But it just means that throughout the life of an Agile initiative, we're going to be making change happen quite frequently. That's the key thing. So that iterative approach is important. And it's all driven on the left-hand side there by business need. That really there's an underpinning thing here, which is that with Agile, we don't just do stuff because it's a logical flow. Thinking of a Gantt chart for a minute, if I'm going to plan something, I can work out every single thing I need to do to get from the beginning to the very end. And I do all of those in their logical sequence. And then it's finished. I've got the entire solution. I hand it over once and off we go. But if we've got an evolving solution, we're constantly making some choices about what goes first, what goes next. And the choices are underpinned by, actually, what does the business need? What's the biggest issue right now? What will give us the biggest advantages right now? So, you know, it's all about business benefits, really. So that was a 2-minute introduction to Agile. If anybody wants a lot more on Agile, as Mark knows, I can speak for about 5 days uninterrupted. And I've created loads of resources on my website at Agile Change Management. So just either get hold of me through LinkedIn or ping me an email, Melanie at agilechangemanagement.co.uk, and I will find things that will answer your questions. If these are the concepts, and these cross from every single Agile methodology, anybody who studied lots of Agile methods will know that we usually start with the principles. The Agile Business Consortium have put 8 principles into Agile PM, for example. We know that we've got principles in Scaled Agile Framework. We know that we've got principles when we look at our work in Scrum and from the Agile Alliance. We know that we've got the sort of good ideas and ways of working in nearly every method, and they're kind of summed up by these concepts. But what I'm interested in is if I need to work in an Agile way, irrespective of my colleagues and the different methods they might be using, what about my behaviours? And behaviours for all of us, it's not a particular role that I'm driving this at. It's not that, oh, you're a line manager and you're being your team are going to have to work in new ways. There's a new system coming at you. There's a restructuring happening. It's not that you're the executive who's commissioning that restructuring or funding the development of a new system or platform. It could be any of those kinds of roles. The thing is, we need to think in these ways. We have to behave in these ways. Now, I've written an accompanying sort of document here to sort of try to explain an awful lot of these behaviours, but I'll just give a couple of minutes summary of the sorts of things. So if I start on the left there with decision making, as far as decision making is concerned, if you've got an evolving solution, you have to keep making decisions about, are we going in the right direction? Should we do the next thing or should we do something different because what we were planning to do doesn't seem to be needed anymore because of the reaction we've just had to what we've just delivered. So it's like it's an almost on decision making. What I've discovered in my Agile work is that I can't coast. I'm not sure I ever coasted that much, but I can't coast. I have to really focus on keep asking myself, keep challenging myself, what should I do next? With the flexibility, one of the things we have to do is overcome lots of blockages because we need to get stuff into operational use. That's the whole point about this evolving solution. It's not good enough to do some work. You actually have to make it work in practice. And that means I need to come up with lots of ideas. And in fact, flexibility, and on the right there, innovation. My willingness to innovate all the time means I need to come up with new ideas. I need to be creative. Flexibility is being open to those new ideas. Innovation, I think, is about being willing to source new perspectives, new information, look at it from different angles and come up with new ideas. So you can't really have flexibility without the innovation. The collaboration piece is really interesting. I'm working with an organisation at the moment who they've got themselves in a right mess in their supply chain, and frankly, they're in bed with a very bad organisation, and it really hit home this week. You know, they're in bed with a Mickey Mouse organisation, and after a while, they begin to look like a Mickey Mouse organisation. So there is something here about the quality of the friends you have reflects on your own quality. So when it comes to collaboration, which is a word that's bandied around all the time in Agile, I don't think we spend quite enough time talking about the quality of collaboration. And maybe one of the things we need to think about is, who are we collaborating with, and how are we doing that? How are we finding these contacts? How are we developing that? And we'll look at that as one of the little hacks this afternoon. Oversight's interesting. As a behavior, I've noticed that I have to bounce between two preferences. We all have a preference for whether or not we're sort of quite focused on the present and the sort of the micro, the sort of the tasks and activities we're right in the middle of doing. Or we prefer to be sort of more bigger picture. We tend to be sort of thinking out into the future. What are things going to look like? And the issue with Agile is actually you have to flip between the two quite a lot. This is because we need to be very busy in Agile delivering that evolving solution. So you need to be focusing on, what am I putting into operational use right now that's going to make a difference to the business right now, that's going to solve a problem in the business right now. But at the same time, you've got to keep an eye on, yep, and where does that fit into this overall destination that we're supposed to be heading for? So your own personal oversight, and also I would suggest the reporting upwards to others, has to be at both of those levels. And what makes it challenging is that we often have a preference for one or the other, and we're being forced to work to our preference and against our preference. Motivation. Motivation is the fact that when it comes to Agile, Agile is about achievement. You can't just say, oh, I've done this, 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 and this. You have to keep saying, yep, and what difference have I made? And I think it's really interesting, as we'll see in one of the hacks later on. You have to ask yourself different questions. Motivation is crucial because of the evolving solution. You see, the thing is, with an evolving solution, you have to be willing to keep going, which leads us right into resilience. Resilience is our ability to pick ourselves up after a setback. It's the ability to keep going even though we probably doubt ourselves, we doubt the probability of achieving the solution. It isn't possible as well, there's a link there, to be able to take the frequent decisions without resilience. And having resilience, I think, is also linked to something else, which is about your confidence in your own abilities. If you know that you can, if you've got resilience and you're quite good at bouncing back with an evolving solution when something hasn't quite worked, that ability to bounce back and look at it from a different perspective and come up with the next idea that might be the winner is really important. But what I've noticed in people who do have this sort of agile mindset is that they have a sort of inner confidence in themselves, that they accept that not everything's going to work first time. And when there are failures, and I know we talk about fail fast in Agile a lot, it's a lovely phrase, but emotionally that word fail does trigger things in the brain. But when we do fail, when something doesn't work, the people with resilience don't internalize it as it must be their fault and they are in the wrong and how awful and they've been stupid and how humiliating. They just go, yeah, okay, some experiments work, some don't. What can we do better next time? And they move on. So I think there's motivation, there's resilience, and then ultimately there is something around trust when it comes to actually making an agile world work a little bit better, because you can't have collaboration without trust. And when I interviewed multiple leaders for my Agile Change Management textbook, they came up with sort of the need to be reliable, do what you said you were going to do, and be predictable, stick to your values, you know, make sure you're consistent with how you behave and what you ask others to behave, how you ask others to behave. So again, I mean, none of these things are uniquely Agile. These behaviors can't be claimed by the world of Agile to be unique. In fact, whenever I look at this picture, I think of this as really, I think the 21st century leadership proposition. This is what we're asking of leaders now. We're asking leaders to be quite amazing in terms of that constant sort of look to the future, but don't lose sight of the present either, and all of these things going around. If anybody's got any questions, observations that they want to put in, any challenges, I love that. And Mark is always watching the chat, and will put them to me. So if you can make this two-way, even better. I'm sure there's a few of you staring at this right now going, oh, she's forgotten X. Throw it at me. Tell me which ones I've forgotten, because I wouldn't disagree. It's incredibly hard to write a comprehensive picture of Agile behaviours, or this kind of these personal and professional sort of leadership behaviours that we need. But I'm hoping I've captured as many as possible that underpin things. Any comments that I should be aware of, Mark? Oh, maybe he's gone off for a cup of tea.
Sorry, I was double muted. There is one. Yeah, there's a few coming now. These seem extremely demanding on personality. Yeah, fair point.
It's extremely demanding. Yeah, and that is my point. I think that we are asking, we're very quick to judge in this third decade of the 21st century. And I look at this and I think, often I think, good grief, how many times have I fallen off this diagram this week already? In terms of, only today I was thinking whether or not I was getting absolutely caught up in the day-to-day and not stepping back enough. That oversight piece of checking in with myself, am I going in the right direction? The decision making that we're going to look at, have I been doing enough of that? Am I innovating enough? Oh, honestly, you can drive yourself nuts with whether or not you're being, all of these things.
Yeah, and there's a couple on failing, interestingly. So one attendee says, don't be scared of failing, and another has got a good anagram for it: first attempt in learning.
Oh, I love that. Whoever that was, you're a genius. Yeah, I totally agree that we shouldn't be scared of it. But I coach an awful lot of people, and when you listen to them, instead of when I ask questions about what's happened, I sort of say, so why do you think that happened? What do you think, what circumstances led to that? What do you think will be different next time? What do you think we can avoid next time? What do you think we could add to it? And none of that is judgmental. It's staying out of judgment. And the thing is that actually we ourselves, we try to do that for others, but we actually fail to do it for ourselves. So what damages our resilience is that negative inner voice that gets let loose, which is, oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, you idiot. How could you have failed on that? And it's the first thing that we do. So I totally agree. Failure is absolutely, it's always a learning opportunity. But when it comes to emotional, just be careful of using the word, because I think, and I would totally agree that you replace the word failure with learning opportunity. I was talking to a CEO recently who was using the phrase the doomsday scenario, and I said, stop. No, I don't want you talking like that, because if you label something like that, then that is the imprint that's emotionally going into your brain, and therefore you will always associate negativity with it. It's not the doomsday scenario. I agree. It's if that situation occurs, it's going to be a bit of a mess, and it's going to be hard work to dig ourselves out of it. But it is actually the alternative scenario, not the doomsday scenario. Language matters with the way our brains work. Language carries so many associations from our past experiences, from the imprint from when we first sort of learned to understand words. So just be careful of the language you use, certainly, and maybe the word failure can be replaced by learning instead. So we know now we're going to be ambitious. So what I'm going to try and do for the rest of this webinar is try to give you some hacks. These are all, hack is hopefully a very productive mini solution, yeah, something that's been proven in action. And trust me, I'm using all of these. Earlier on this afternoon, there was one that I sort of leapt out of my chair and started doing because I thought, oh yeah, I'm running up against time now. So let me see if I can bring these to life for you. Any other comments before I get started, Mark? Anything else I should know?
There was one in particular that's highly relevant because of the time. Lost track of it. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, interested. Any thoughts on the impact of home working with so many people working from home and that impact on working in an agile way?
I think that it impacts quite a few of these. Quickly, I'll go through them. Resilience. I think that two factors. Well, one that's really important is that our inner voice, I'm afraid, tends to get far more airtime because we haven't got our colleagues around us. And the second factor is that bounce back, emotional bounce back, comes from breaking the cycle of our thoughts and replenishing our emotional energy, which means, you know, I know, for example, I used to commute all over the world and actually, you know, I used to get on a plane and actually I would replenish my emotional energy because I wasn't in the office and I was going to watch a movie and I was going to take a nap. Now I'm at my desk. If I'm working from home today, and yeah, 14 hours will just fly by. I'm absolutely not looking after myself. So resilience is affected. I think that, well, we know collaboration becomes online, and I don't think that's going to leave us, by the way. So we're going to have to get good at collaborating online and in face-to-face. I think that when it comes to building trusted relationships, a lot of the emotional cues that we rely on to sort of, you know, get to know somebody. Remember Albert Morabian's work, 1972, I think it was, when he talked about 7% of our communication is words, and you can only hear me right now. You can't see my body language. You can hear my tone of voice, you can hear my words, but about 50% of my communication is me waving my arms around here and getting really excited about the things I'm saying. And you can't see any of that. So I do think that when it comes to building trusted relationships, when it becomes networking for the collaboration, all of those things are really difficult. There was an article in the Financial Times on Monday which called out a phrase I was particularly interested in, which is around the online relationships we've had. We've naturally, because we're human, have gone and formed a small network of probably people we've met a lot face to face in the past. And those are the ones we've turned to for emotional support. And the phrase was around an echo chamber, that actually we're not getting much flexibility and innovation from that, because actually it's the same old people. I was just saying to Mark before we got on this call just how many things I have said yes to in the last week alone, for things I wouldn't normally do. I'm going to be helping to work out who's speaking at the Agile Business Consortium conference. I'm going through the Chartered Management Consultant thing that's bringing me into contact with lots of different people. I've said yes to doing presentations for lots of different organizations and meeting new people that way. So I'm forcing myself out of my comfort zone. If you want a quick hit on that one specifically, I wrote something on LinkedIn recently. I'll republish it. If you get hold of me or connect with me on LinkedIn, I will direct you to those sources. Right, okay then. So these, I think we said in the webinar description I was going to do 10 sort of hacks, but I actually looked through this and I thought there's probably more in here as I talk about them, but we'll see how it goes on. So the first thing I want to talk about is that it's all about acceptance criteria. This connects to things like the evolving solution, but also that concept, but also the decision making that underpins that. Effectively, we need to be experimental. We need a scientific mindset, you know, because we just talked about fail fast, haven't we? We need to do little bits and see if it's working. Now, the thing is, that sounds great, but it requires something. You don't ever start an experiment unless you have worked out the guardrails, the boundary within which, hey, if we see these things, we know it's working. If it goes outside these boundaries, ooh, it's not working. So you have to do the groundwork before you actually carry out the task. So you have to be able to ask yourself, has my experiment worked? Well, it's all very well. I'm going to say what we ought to be doing, but I'm hoping I'm giving you solutions for how you do it. And the first thing I do is I turn to my, I have these lists. I have good words and bad words. Basically, these are to kickstart my own acceptance criteria. I've got this whole list of things. Like good is I remove duplication of effort, or maybe I automate something, or I streamline something, or I make it faster or quicker, or I simplify it, or I make it more intuitive. Oh, honestly, I've got a whole list. I'm always adding to it because it's my go-to list when I have to write the acceptance criteria for something we're going to do. But at the same time, it's not that difficult, is it? Once you've got the good words, to find the equal yet opposite. You know, added repetition, duplication, it's taken longer, it's more complex, it's more confusing. So that's really easy. How do I do this? How do I get these? Well, I think there's two questions, right? I imagine that I'm praising somebody for something, that they've done a brilliant job. And I think, oh, this is working well because. So when we're going through the Spanish tax system at the moment, and it's that time of the year, the money comes out your bank account automatically on the 30th of June, whether you like it or not. And it all has to be calculated around now. It's kind of interesting. And I'm thinking, wow, my accountant has been brilliant. Why has he been so brilliant? What has he done? And I'm looking at accuracy, I'm looking at completeness, I'm looking at intuitive instructions. Oh, just brilliant. So you think about, if you think about any piece of work, think about saying, why was that so brilliant? And by the way, you often need to think of somebody else, not yourself, because just like I talked about resilience, we are not that good at thinking about the positives, but we're certainly not that good about thinking about the positives about ourselves. There are not that many narcissists in this world. So it's easier to picture somebody else's work and go, wow, this is what I praise them for, this is what I thank them for, this is what I want to sort of put in the celebration email. On the flip side, I'm afraid to say this is the one I find so much easier, and to be fair, I've got a particular electrician in mind when I look around my house. This is useless because, you know, so thinking about what has annoyed me, what is irritating me, you know, that sort of thing. But that gets you to that list of good and bad words, and that gets you to your acceptance criteria. I'm going to use Mark as my bellwether here, because do put some comments and whether you like it, don't like it in the chat, you know, love it, hate it, I'm absolutely fine. I'm putting so many of these things in front of you that some will resonate and some you'll go, oh, it doesn't work for me. But each time, Mark, tell me if I'm not making sense, because this is all stuff I do in practice, and sometimes it's not easy to explain your own habits to other people. Does that work for you, Mark?
Yeah, sure. I'm keeping a close eye on the question field.
Excellent. I love the fact you're doing the chat because that is so complicated. So finding the acceptance criteria, so you don't waste time doing something and then at the end of it go, oh, is this what we wanted or not? No, we've got to know that up front, haven't we? It's crucial. Right. Again, back to the evolving solution. And this is also driven by the fact that we are supposed to be creating benefits. We are supposed to be making a difference. So I found this to be the most challenging because I'm human. As a human being, I like to focus on my tasks. We can easily write a to-do list. We're very good at that. It's much harder to stand back and go, so what? What's the result of these tasks? In other words, focus on accomplishments or achievements. So this is, I start each day in this way, thinking, okay, what would be a good result at the end of the day? When I've finished, what would make me feel satisfied? Who would be going, she's done a good job, I've got what I needed. Try to sort of elevate your thinking up to what a good result would look like. Yeah, that's That's how I start the day. Really, really difficult. Let me give you a sort of checklist, right? So I think about, right, by the end of the day, what decisions were taken or what agreements were made. It might be people agreeing to do some work. It might be people agreeing to a timetable. We might finally have got some dates booked in the diary for the board meetings for the next year. Is it something I would have created that I hadn't created yesterday? So I've written you this 8-page document that sums up this webinar, and at the end of today, that was my achievement for today. You'd think I would have done it earlier, but really I was right up against the deadline. But anyway, tonight when I fold down the laptop, I can go, right, I achieved this, this, and this. And that's another part of this, is that I will make that effort to then sort of go back through the day and go, but this got done, this was completed, this was decided, this was agreed. So I'm sort of building that mental sort of map in my head of, yeah, okay, that's been done now. Really important to do that, because otherwise you can be really busy. This is the thing about Agile. You don't want to spin around being really busy unless you can be honest with yourself and go, do you know what? I'm doing useful stuff here, not just being busy for the sake of being busy. Which connects with the other hack, actually, which is that you know that you've got to create the highest value work first. Anybody who's ever been anywhere near Agile or been on my Agile change agent courses know that Moscow prioritization, the must, the should, the could, and the won't have this time. Easy structure to explain. It's the behavior, the skill is being able to do it and bring a sort of laser-like focus to it and to cut through the emotion. Now, the reason I'm keen for you to build up this behavior is because this is something that I think we have to help an awful lot of our colleagues with as well. Because this failure to do the highest value work first is why too many of us are being asked to do multiple things by our bosses, and we're plate spinning when actually they haven't brought that laser-like focus to what they're asking us to do, and they haven't done the hard graft. This is hard graft, finding the thing that is most useful. Now, the checklist that I'm giving you now, obviously, you're going to build on all of these questions. So I've just given you a few. But the key thing about these questions is this, that when you answer a question, you're making things more rational. You're cutting through the emotion. And also, when you start to doubt yourself, you've got that justification there. Hey, this is the reason I chose this. I'm doing the right things. So ask a variety of questions. I'm sure you can add to this. These were just the ones, honestly, I sort of tried to write this straight off the top of my head. So an imminent deadline is often one of the key things. I could put in there, because I'm a consultant, you know, who's paid, who hasn't. I will often use that because there was some work this morning and I thought, oh no, I haven't had the purchase order for this yet. And actually, especially government departments, I've been bitten so many times that until they confirm that they genuinely want the work and they've given you a PO number, it's not worth doing. So actually, although it would have been great to do something this morning, I would have enjoyed it, it would have been creative, and I was right in the mood for it, it was not the most valuable thing to be doing, because actually it could turn out to be a complete waste because the client could change their mind at the last minute. So there's always something in there, you know, there's somebody who's going to be massively inconvenienced if I don't put it together and get something finished. Yeah, I mean, I got up at, I don't know what time this morning, because I had to hurtle into town to get some stuff for somebody who was coming to a meeting at 11 o'clock. I could have made some excuses at 11 o'clock, but actually that just would have created that sort of domino effect of I failed to deliver, so they're failing to deliver, and then you've got a whole chain of inconvenienced people. That also connects to the other one, which is sometimes there's something you're doing is an input to something else. So you need to get on with it, or maybe there's something that will solve a massive problem for you. On the flip side, you know, the dividing line here is also make sure that what you're picking does not get sent off course by the fact that maybe there's some work that's easier to do, I want to do it, or that, you know, maybe it requires that input that's not yet available. So, you know, you'll only get so far and then you haven't got what you need. Hopefully you like that one. Any comments, Mark, from the chat?
All the comments so far just making sense and in broad agreement. But there's one
good.
comment I think we could all relate to. One of the things that so many professionals do so frequently today is attend meetings. If we think what did we achieve in this meeting, how many of those would be able to answer with a concrete result?
Yeah, I've read so much on this, and one of the things I really like is that if I couldn't attend, would you still hold the meeting? You know, if some emerge, and then we've all been through hell, haven't we, in the last 18 months or so, nightmares. I mean, I'm currently 2 of my coachees, and I have about 5 that I'm coaching at any one time. 2 have been have had bereavements, and today somebody else has gone off on compassionate leave. So there's a lot of it about, and it is that question of, seriously, if I couldn't attend, could you get on with it yourselves? Do you really need me? Am I there to make up the numbers? And I think it's just what I do in a very practical way. I have to do it elegantly because my clients are sometimes amazed by the question, which is, please send me the agenda of things that we're going to talk about, so that I say so that I can prepare. But basically what I'm actually doing, you can all work it out, can't you, is I'm forcing them to think, why on earth are we having the meeting? You know, and the number of times they don't come back to me with an agenda, and I keep plugging away going, no, please tell me what it is you want to know. Why are we having this meeting? What decision do we have to take at the end of the meeting? I shouldn't have to ask these questions. None of us should. But actually, you know, that's what happens. This, I think, again, back to Agile is full of many pieces, many achievements that we've got to do. Partly because there's an evolving solution, but partly because of our VUCA world. You know, the level of volatility that we're currently in. There are so many changes taking place around us. The worst thing is that I've put it up as a network diagram, but it's sort of like a domino effect, isn't it? That you think, well, which bit can I pick at? And I often experience, I don't know where to get started, because if I do that, then it triggers that and that. But if I do that, it will trigger that. Oh, if I can't do that because I'm waiting on that. And it's that circular argument that you can lose an awful lot of time on. And deliver on time is a key concept in Agile, which is, I don't know where to get started. You know, so you need, the thing that really can really get through this is breaking the work into smaller pieces, so that you can do a little bit, you can get something achieved that you go, right, well, that's done. No, I can't write this entire document right now, but there are diagrams that need to be created. Let me just sit down, I'm feeling in creative mood, let me draw some of the diagrams, and let me get those drawn up in PowerPoint. That's one thing that now exists that didn't exist before. I can't write the whole paper yet because I'm still waiting on something else, but I can do that bit. And it takes I've personally found that it takes a bit of effort to sort of break things into usable, valuable pieces, but once they're smaller, it's incredibly helpful. And this links to the next 2 that we're going to talk about around motivation, because if you've got to keep delivering all the time, I have found this to be true of Agile, to be fair, which is that it's that constant sort of treadmill almost. We have to keep going, we have to keep delivering stuff. So the thing that I've got to do with that is I've absolutely got to come up with new ideas all the time, because I've got to know what I'm going to deliver next. So that's fairly important. So being able to do that, sort of breaking the circular argument, breaking things down into smaller pieces, that requires a sort of level of innovation. And if I'm not sure, if I'm running short of ideas, I do this very quick neuro hack, really, which is it is about taking a different perspective. So I might imagine the situation from somebody else's viewpoint. The obvious one would be, hang on, let's step into the shoes of the recipient. Call them the customer if you want, but customer always implies external, or maybe they're not. They might be a colleague who's your internal customer, but who is the recipient of what you're getting? How would they react to it? What do you think they'd look at first? What is it that they want to use first? What's the most important thing to them? then I look at it, sometimes depending on the work I'm doing, but I might look at it going, okay, I'm going to use my dad for a moment, in that he has a level of digital skills. I've put him onto WhatsApp. He's pretty, he writes very long texts, but he still writes text in WhatsApp. He can't take photographs for love nor money. But, you know, he's got some digital skills, but they are at the very low end. But at 87, I'm going to let him off. And then I've got colleagues who are at the very high end. And depending on what I'm doing, I might look at it through the lens of somebody who is very technically capable or somebody who isn't, and see whether or not that drives out more options, more ideas, other things I need to look at. And also I find the one about the level of self-service. I find this to be really useful because sometimes I'm doing pieces of work and I realise that actually for customers who expect to be able to self-serve 24/7, actually what I'm doing is not necessary, or there's more we could do to push out to them. So I've identified more work, but that work is about creating pathways where they can access stuff and use it in the future. So I just find taking these different perspectives. This is my little list, particularly the digital skills, particularly the self-service, and particularly the recipient, not the customer, works for me. Sometimes it's about different offices, different locations. That works as well. Staying motivated, right? Absolutely crucial because of the evolving solution. It's a long go. And this is just a flip of your brain. It really shouldn't be that difficult, but it is. What do we typically do, right? I'm in the middle of a piece of work. What do? I look forward and I think of all the things I've still got to do to get to the finish point. And then I start to feel pretty overwhelmed, and then I start to feel tired, and then I find that my motivation is starting to drop off a little bit. Instead, why don't I do something else, which is, this is where I am right now. Let me just look back at all the things that I've done so far. Let's look how far I've come, not how far I still have to go. What does that do for me? Well, it does a couple of things. It reminds me that actually I have overcome challenges already. So if you want to feed your resilience, the quickest way to feed your resilience is give your brain some evidence that actually you've overcome stuff already. Think back to when you got started and you weren't sure how to get started, or think about something where you hit a roadblock and you found a way over it, round it, or under it. But if you look back at how far you've come and all the things you've achieved, I promise you, you will feel far more energized to take the next little step. And this is also connected. These two things are connected, because it's not enough just to be able to do that, although trust me, this is a skill, being able to do this, but also it's about being able to then break that work into small pieces. Have you seen there's a theme for this? You know, being able to break work into small pieces to be able to break the circular argument, but also breaking it into small pieces so that you stay motivated. Because if you've done a small piece, it's done and dusted, you're finished, you've got an achievement, an accomplishment that you can then genuinely look back on, and it reinforces your motivation. The other thing is that you keep work small, because when you look at something and it takes less time, it takes less effort, it's less, you know, the smaller you make something, the more self-contained you make it, the less it has dependencies which hold you back. So you don't procrastinate as much, you have more achievements. So again, all of this feeds into a virtuous circle. There's an American psychologist who talks about ladders and not making the rungs of the ladder too far apart, because otherwise you'd fall through them when you were climbing. I think of stepping stones, and I think, well, if we put the stepping stones too far apart, how do I get to the next stepping stone? I have to take an amazing leap. Now, that leap requires an awful lot of energy, but it also carries the risk that I'll fall and I won't make the jump. Why do I want to make my working life that hard? Get good at breaking stuff down into smaller, useful pieces. Now, I thought I did put up something on LinkedIn a while ago when my new brain arrived, which I've been waiting for weeks. It's my brain, as it's a wooden brain full of all the little bits of brain that I can put back together again. So there was a picture on LinkedIn, and a number of you commented on the sunshine. So when I took a picture of the visual tools that help you, I think, stay motivated, I couldn't help but I took I took the picture of my own. This is genuinely mine this morning. Actually, it was the BCS, the Chartered Institute of IT, or the British Computer Society Postit Notes that I've been using for a while now. They've got the little BCS logo in the top left, but they're all over this, and this is the stuff that I've got to do. This is stuff that's in progress, and as you can see, it's kind of genuine. There's not as much in the done column as I'd really like, but I thought you'd like to see on the right hand side the blue sky and the trees, because it does make people smile. So there we go. But it's a serious point, which is that as far as our brain is concerned, two things. First of all, this visual helps us get a grip very, very quickly, because we do respond well to pictures. And the second thing is, and the reason I use Post-it notes, is because the ceremony of moving the Post-it note from one column to another, when I move it from to do to in progress, I'm sort of gearing, I go, oh, right, you ready for this? Now, come on, let's get this done. And there's a sort of energy to it. And when I move it from in progress to done, I reward myself with a cup of tea. So I get really rather excited. So, and I'm laying down that neural pathway that goes, hey, I've succeeded, which feeds right back into the emotional resilience we talked about at the very beginning. So there we go. Hopefully you kind of like that. Is anybody moaning about the fact that I've shown a blue sky and trees? Mark, do tell me if I have.
No, not at all.
No, that's good. There we go. Right. This is my. Now I'm a bit cautious about showing you the next one, because I would say that it absolutely works when I apply it, but I would say that I don't do enough applying of this. I am guilty of not doing this, but so I'm going to. I always like to be authentic. This does work. It works really well. It's just that when I calculate the answer, it makes me feel sick because I realize I've overcommitted. You'll see what I mean. So let's have a look at the next one. All right. So every piece of work that I've commissioned, or I'm about to do, I should apply the rule of three, which is probably best shown by this visual, to be honest, which is that what you need to do when you look at a piece of work is you think, well, to be honest, I'm going to have to create the first version of it, which is going to require, that's where to do that, I need to research it, design it, be creative. I was writing something earlier this week, and I was sort of running around the garden at 2 evenings this week. It was on my mind on Sunday. I can't tell you how many hours I spent on that sort of initial sort of draft and design. But whatever that idea was, I then need to put it out for feedback to people who are going to be using it, and I need to get their ideas. What do you want to amend? What do you want me to remove from it? What do you want me to add to it? What do you want to keep? It's that sort of feedback loop, and that will create an updated version, and then I'll put it out to them again. So if it's a written document, for example, it might just be typos that they're finding in their feedback loop to get me to the final version, or if it's presentations, it might well be that, in the updated version, they were looking at a logical sort of flow of the story the first time they reviewed it, and now they're honing in on the diagrams, for example. But I need time to create the final version. And it always takes longer than if you just imagine a piece of work as a whole. It's just the way our brains work. We look at something and we're not that good at sizing things, and we look at it and think, okay, that'll take me half a day. Yeah, actually what you mean by that is that the first version, the draft version, will take you half a day. But then you haven't really built in the time for the feedback loop and you updating it, and the feedback loop and you finalizing it. So maybe in total, the elapsed time is actually going to be the whole of this week, and the amount of time you've had to commit to it is not half a day, it's actually a full day, because you'll have to do the updating. So as I said, very logical, and it's a very good thing to do. And every now I congratulate myself when I do it, but I'm aware that I don't do it often enough. Now, this is going to be one that comes back to when I talked about resilience earlier. I talked about confidence, and this is going to be hard for people who are good at self-blame. That feedback loop I just talked about, you have to invite feedback. You have to tee people up to give you feedback, not criticism, okay? And I often, well, some of you have been on the Agile Change Agent course, for example. So 2 days, we zip through things on Zoom, and you know me well enough by now. I really want your feedback. That's why I keep asking Mark if there's anything in the chat. I'm fascinated by what other people have got to say. But the number of people who, during that course, and we're all in it together, will say, oh, sorry, can I ask a question? And I want to scream, don't say sorry. Don't apologize. You've got nothing to apologize for. It's my fault. If you need to ask a question, I clearly haven't got to a part of the story you need answering yet, or I wasn't being clear enough. So there is nothing for you to apologize about. And that really hits home here, is that what you want to do is not sort of push things out and sort of in an apology. Oh, these are all the things I haven't done. Oh, I ran out of time. I haven't finished that yet. No. Focus people on what you are putting in front of them. What has been achieved. Again, this has been a theme all the way through today, isn't it? You're breaking things down in small pieces. You're having those early and frequent achievements. And then when you put it out for feedback, you concentrate on this is the thing you've got. Do not list for me all the things you haven't quite got round to yet, all the features and functions you didn't get to do, the could haves, for example, if you're Moscowing it. No, just tell me what it is that I've got in front of me, and then you ask me very specific questions. This, by the way, is tuning up the brain. The brain is pretty good at answering questions that are put in front of it. So do that. Don't ask me, oh, what do you think? What do you think is a very emotive term, and I will give you emotions, whether I like or dislike something. Actually, that's not the feedback you need, is it? Because actually asking me, what do you think? How do you feel? Don't do it, because I'm wired to be negative because I'm human. So I'm more likely to come out with criticism and not positivity. That's the first issue. And frankly, this is about delivering an evolving solution. This is about putting something into operational use. So how I feel is irrelevant. What you've got to ask me is this useful? Which bits are the most useful? What can we add to those to make them even more useful? Yeah? What else do you want to add? Is there anything there that we can remove because you don't think it's relevant? You see, you didn't ask me whether I liked it or disliked it. You asked me, what can I add? What can I amend? What should we keep? What should we remove? Focus on those things. But please do not ask me how I feel, because I will tell you how I feel based on my day to day. And that's got absolutely nothing to do with the quality of what's being put in front of me. But you've just let my brain wander. Whereas if you'd put in front of me, do you like that? Do you want more of that? Yeah, then that's what's going to happen. Just 2 more, and then we're coming to the end, so I'll be as quick as I can. Deliver on time, don't forget. I don't want you to lose your way. And this is what I was saying earlier on, was that when it comes to sort of oversight in an agile world, you have to sort of take that macro and that micro view. So sometimes you just have to take a moment and go, hang on, what's the destination? Where are we going? What's that bigger picture that I'm trying to contribute to? Because I've got caught up in the micro and I'm bashing myself up against this thing and trying to perfect this little piece of work. Whereas if I step back a moment and just go, oh yeah, but in the bigger picture, this is like 5% of the bigger picture. I've got other stuff I should be doing. Come on, Mel, get a move on. Stop fannying about with that bit. Get on with all the other stuff. And also you question whether or not what you're doing, you're not getting caught up, are you, in just adding more and more to something and not getting on with the rest of it. So you think about what I've just done, what I'm doing now, what's coming up next. You've got to make sure that it's a coherent sort of story, not, you know, going off at a tangent because I've got caught up in an enthusiasm somewhere. So that's one of the things about not losing your way, is there's some storytelling here. You know, what I will do is if I feel a little bit like it, often it's for me, it's at lunchtime. I've had an incredibly busy morning. I will make myself another cup of tea. I shall go and stand somewhere in the garden and I will ask myself this question. Right, okay, hang on. What's the end goal here? What's that bigger picture? How far are we towards it? What else is going on? I just want to put what I've done in context, in a wider context, because that will always give me an incredibly useful view of what I'm up to. And then lastly, as I said, on LinkedIn, I wrote about some quick hacks for networking. I think I did 5 things to think about. And there's a few bits in here, which is that, you know, it's really important for innovation, for flexibility, you need to collaborate, but you need quality collaboration. So you need to think, can I connect with this person? Should I attend this webinar? Will I hear? I mean, I attended a webinar at lunchtime. I was bolting down a cheese sandwich and I was listening to this guy. And that first 14 minutes where they didn't get to anything other than talking about what shirts they're wearing in the heat, luckily I was doing my filing. I always do my filing at the start of a webinar because people can faff about for 10-15 minutes and not get on with it. But once the presenter started speaking, I thought, oh my God, you really know your subject. He knew what he was talking about. And I thought, oh yeah, make a note of that. I was at a neuroscience lecture on Monday night, I think it was, and I connected with the woman afterwards, the professor in the US. She's brilliant. And it means that I will keep an eye out for some more of her stuff. So I'm forcing myself into situations where I will meet new people. Because that will bring me new perspectives. It will give me a greater diversity of thought and experience. It will inspire me and excite me. So have a think in quite a deliberate way. You know, when did you last connect with somebody new and different? When did you last do something that you haven't done before? Put yourself forward for something else, volunteer for something, because, you know, being selfish for a moment, you'll find new contacts, you'll grow your network. It's not accidental. And collaboration underpins an awful lot of what we're doing in Agile. So I'm sure there's loads more questions, so just fire them at me.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. We've got time for a couple, haven't we? So I like this one. What would be required agile behaviours for people on the ground in comparison to leaders?
To be honest, I think if I go back all the way to this, I'm not sure there is that much difference, because if you're impacted by change, right, you actually still have to innovate because you have to change your way of working. So you still need to be flexible. You do need to be resilient. You do need to stay motivated in a world which constantly changes around you. So you may not have the responsibility for putting these changes in place, but I would say that an awful lot of these behaviours, they are not hierarchical. Somebody on the shop floor still got to make a decision about what do they do first, what do they do next, because they are being hit by multiple changes and new ways of working all the time. So my honest answer is, I don't think it's that role specific. I think that the people who are impacted by organizational agility needs these behaviors just as much as those who are architecting organizational agility.
Great, thanks, Mel. And handy that you went back to that slide, because there's a question on that actually. Is there a meaning behind the lines connecting the behaviours, or are they random, e.g. why no line between trust and innovation?
Because I didn't want to cross over the words. So no, it's completely random, and I put in as many as I could actually get round to. And then I thought, Mel, will adding one more line really add value to this talk, or do you think you ought to create another visual? So I was being very agile in my approach, and I was being led by value. So I didn't meet that person's value, clearly.
All right, one final question for now. From your experience of being agile, what are the top things which work when you were building trust with a customer?
Oh, okay. Let me go back to the trust one, because I always find it helpful to have the list in front of me. You think I might know them off by heart. Where was trust? Oh no, sorry, I was reading it from my own list. I better put this back anyway because I know you want to show that one. I think, well, I did the interviews. I did over 400 interviews. I remember a lot of the interviews, mainly because, to be honest, the interviews were lovely because I went out for breakfast, I went out for coffee, I went out for lunch, went out for dinner, went out for drinks with people. And do you know what? Right across the board, although there are 5 factors in my Agile change management book, the top one above everything is be reliable. Do what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it. And that really ties into being agile, because if you break things into small little pieces, you are more able to get something in front of somebody very quickly. And what's that doing? It's showing them that you are actually delivering stuff, that you know what you're doing, that you're willing to consult with them, but you said you get something done and you've got it done. And there is something, my family are often saying to me, you know, I'm coming towards the end of the day and I'm still going. And they go, oh, come on, stop now, have a rest. And the things that will keep me going, if there's anything that I promise to somebody, I absolutely will deliver it. Because I know from all my interviews that reliability is more important for trust than anything else. So it's not that I've disappointed somebody, I've also taken a small percentage of trust away out of our relationship if I don't deliver on time what I said I was going to deliver.
Great.
So there
Thanks
we
very
go.
much, Mel.
If you want to join me, again, if you fancy more of this, I'm going to do an Agile Change Agent course, which is here on the left in the lovely orange at the end of this month. And I've got a couple of spaces left. So if somebody wants that, just get hold of me because I don't do that many of them. But I could talk about Agile for ages, but it's all practical stuff. And this is what I love. You know, it's why I love the Agile Change Agent course. It's full of all these practical hacks. So let's do more of them. Let's be more agile together.
Yeah, great stuff, Mel. And yeah, there's a selection of courses and certifications there. I won't go through them all here, but yeah, whatever your role in Agile, there's something for you, I think. So whether you're
There's something for
involved
everybody,
in
and I love
Scrum,
the digital badges. They look
yeah,
brilliant, don't they? They look really
yeah,
great. Yeah, and
yeah.
that's
So
what
whether
you get
you're,
at the end of one of the APMG courses, guys. You get to share your
yeah,
digital badge out on social media, and it looks great.
yeah, and we'll include these details in the follow-up email. So do look out for that tomorrow. So that
And the
just
list of those
leaves
5 trust things will be in the document that I'm going to send to Mark now, who will distribute it to all of those who are registered on this call as well.
fantastic. Great. So yeah, just leaves us to thank everyone for attending. I do hope you found it useful and informative. I sure have. And thank you, Mel, as ever, for your contributions and delivery. It's always great to hear from you.
Thank you.
So yeah, thanks again, everyone. And just a reminder that we have recorded this as well. So the follow-up email tomorrow that will contain a link to the recording slides and the additional information that Mel just mentioned. So as I say, look out for that tomorrow. And that's it. So thank you again, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.